Okay, so as I mentioned, now you can kind of, if we have content that addresses a specific recruiting challenge, I'm going to try to show it real time, or I can just go through some scenarios I've prepared. What do you guys think? We can stick with the choose your own adventure. If you have an idea, I'm happy to do it on the fly, or I can just go through. No opinion? Oh, okay, go ahead.
So I really appreciate this perspective. I think it's very smart and very forward thinking. We are a lot smaller than those companies.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And one, budget of course comes into play. Even putting names with faces, it scares people that basically is showing who our superstars are to the world, and buy-in. So I think the return on investment is a really good question. Kind of like, how do you sell this in a smaller scale to a company that's maybe not as forward-thinking as like Dell or Sodexo?
Yeah, I think that's really hard too. One would be starting very small on a super budget. So it costs very little to interview some of your employees, and you can even use first name. You don't have to use their whole name or whatever. You can make it anonymous, and even just text-based stories are, and then going out and seeing how they perform. The thing that's tough about that is you need to be, over time, developing your channel. So how it performs really depends on, the regularity that you're posting and the audience that you're building over time. So if you have the best video in the world and you put it out, we developed some really great content that I loved, but it went on a YouTube channel with 200 followers. So I'd say that how I would approach that when you don't have a budget, and if people are wary, I would interview a bunch of people in my organization, text-based stories. I would start sharing it on social on the regular. And really, the best practice is to do it for 6 months on a regular basis, and then see what happens. And then you'll be able to say, hey, listen, and hopefully, the tracking can be tricky, but after a period of time, where are your hires coming from? And it may even take one anecdote to prove that the whole project is worth it. So a really good example, so we worked with a small government consulting company, and we developed 3 videos for them. They put it on their Facebook page. They were wondering, what's going to happen? They did get a lot of views, so sure. But in an interview with a finalist candidate, the CEO asked, it was a candidate that he was surprised to see come through, a senior person, that he was surprised to make it to the end because they weren't from government contracting. They were from a Fortune 100 company, a very impressive background. And he said, oh, why did you apply? And the one candidate said, I was looking for a company that had a great culture. I was not considering government contracting. I happened across your video in my Facebook feed because they did some Facebook ads, and I applied. So that's the reason he applied. So someone hearing that, and they hired that person. So sometimes it just takes the one key hire that came from your content. But again, it's helpful to do it for at least 6 months and see what happens. And then hopefully you can make the case for it. Yes, I don't know where to go first. I'll go here.
We recently did videos for a new referral program that we kicked out. We took a day, sat down 8 people, and I was amazed how terrified they were
Yeah.
to be in front of the
Yeah.
camera. I knew some people who present at company functions, who were outgoing and bright, but as soon as that camera turns on, it was like, so we ended up taking, it turned out great, by the way, American System. But we took short snippets of them talking, and when you put it all together, it worked. But the woman you had really a long speech that she put out. Obviously, some of that's being prepared or preparing the candidate. Do you have any other tips for?
I do. I have so many.
Honing those?
Yes.
So many.
Yeah, and I'd say it's similar to interview prep when your star candidate's going to the final interview is kind of how I felt. It's so much positive reinforcement. And that same project I spoke about, the government contractor, we had 2 interviewers, and at the end of the day I was surprised to hear the interviewer feedback was that the people who had the interviewer that gave them thumbs up continuously felt like they did awesome, and the people who didn't felt like they did terrible and I was nervous, and so I'd say that so much, and understanding that when people tell stories, the first one's always going to be really long, and you let them get it out and let them talk, and then you say, that was so good. Let's do it again and focus on these 3 things. And then also, and so that would be one thing, the positive reinforcement, I love that story, that's going to be great, and let's tell it this way because these are things that are important. Also, if you do a professional If people are nervous about how they look, if you do a professional shoot, showing them a picture of what they look like really helps because everyone looks awesome with lighting. And it's like, oh, I look great, I've got this, you know? So I'd say that's one thing the one thing that can help a lot. I think telling people too, hey, we're just gonna take 30 seconds of a half-hour interview. We're gonna take the very best of what you say. You can do things over. But then, of course, giving them that constructive feedback of like, oh, here's what's good. I think that helps too. Like, hey, we're not going to take you telling the story for 5 minutes. And Mary Alice, wasn't on that shoot, so I can't speak to it, but we get a lot of B-roll so that we can splice things up so it's more succinct. Because people, it's great when you get someone that's really succinct, but it's also great when you get someone excited and they want to tell you all the details, and then you can pick the details that are important after the fact. So I say getting B-roll so you can edit that down is important. Yep.
Have you incorporated the new video on LinkedIn, where people can just kind of upload short snippets into an integrated employee branding program, or what do you think about that?
I think it's great. We haven't done it yet, and our videos haven't been used with clients yet, but I think it's great. I think let's make video commonplace. There's a statistic that says our Facebook feeds are going to be 90% video in 3 years or something like that. To make any way that makes video more commonplace, I think is a great idea. So I support it. Yep.
I have a specific question about when you target those groups for dev, women in tech.
Mm-hmm.
How do you? What's a few tips for getting content for a specific group? We are a tech company, not well known in tech.
Yeah.
We want to get good engineers. How do you create content catering to that population?
That's interviewing your superstars and telling them, other people that are going to see themselves in that person, why it's a great place. So I'd say that's key to the, that's the special sauce really, is the people you want more of, talking to the people that you want to join your organization, and those people are hearing stories. The science of hearing a story in your brain is it's the only way you can implant a memory in someone else's mind. So it's it makes it feels like it happened or is happening to them. So an emotional story, you hear that, your brain lights up. When you hear an emotional story, your brain lights up the same place that the storyteller brain does. So I'd say that's the key, is getting people you want more of to talk about the experience. So the people who are viewing it are putting themselves there. Oh, this person looks like me, their background's like me, this looks like a great place, that's important to me too. And it's also really important for that because you want people to opt out as well. The idea is to get the people that you want more of, and it's better for everyone when you see content that, polarizing is the wrong word, but should be really unique to what your organization is really like. If that makes sense.
On that note, what if the people don't already exist? So for example, we have a really small engineering team, none of which are women.
Yeah.
So obviously a big priority is hiring more women engineers, but we can't tell the story of what it's like to be a woman engineer at our company. So what's the story when you want to attract what you don't already have?
That is such a good question, and I don't have the answer. I wish I did. Bernadette, do you have any ideas? Not to put you on the spot, but I know I don't. We haven't come across that before.
I'll just think about it.
Okay. The same thing, with the ROI question. We'll figure it out and then post it to the group if our team has a collective thought, or if any of our clients do. That's a great question. Oh, go ahead.
How do you determine which social media channel to use for the content?
So we don't. We hand over the content to the clients, and they do. We make some suggestions based on what's performed for clients in the past. But even the people who know their analytics really well still experiment with different things. So I'd say if you don't know, to experiment in lots of different ways to figure out what works is the best. Even the people who know are still experimenting with different things. Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit more about that career pathing tool?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So Sodexo wanted to show real people's careers to show that this is the path that someone typically does take. So if you go on their site, it's basically taking stories of someone's career, and then we're showing, we have the story, and then we're showing pictures of the person throughout the whole.
You ever had to deal with, or how do you handle, because I'm sure this probably doesn't happen
we're an organization, it might be a really hard place to work. It's intense, not easy work, but when we try to do this kind of messaging, we try to make it all roses, and then you've got that sort of big gap between
Yeah.
brand vision, brand reality. How do you address that? What kind of stories can you use to make that kind of attraction?
Yeah, so be as realistic as how tough it is as possible, because that's going to attract the right person for your culture. Really, I know that their culture has changed, but Amazon was, known as having a very tough culture. Is that a hey, see ya? Okay. But when you would tell people stories of what it's like to work at Amazon, the right people are like, oh, I love it, metrics, and if you don't perform, you're out. I love that, So I'd say make it as make it as realistic as possible, because then you don't want to have there's lots of reasons why. First of all, you're not being a good human if you're painting a rosier picture for marketing, fooling job seekers into thinking one thing, and then they get there and it's not the reality. But besides that, just from a business perspective, I'm sure everyone knows this, but the attrition, someone gets in, they're like, oh, I'm so out of here. This is not what I thought. It's 6 months, I'm kind of out of here. So I'd say being as realistic as possible, and get the people who are most successful, and hearing real stories about what has made them successful usually ferrets out those stories. One person that worked at Amazon said about how, and he was a senior person, he was delivering packages on Christmas Day, and he's an executive. So it's like, that's a great story to tell other people. Oh, you're going to do it all. It's going to be you're going to be delivering packages. Go ahead.
That's a little bit like I forget which brand of service, but they have one like, we do more before 8 a.m. Most of the rest of the people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's not me.
But then they go on and do all these positive things about, if it's one of those recruiting ads that they have. First they start with the negative.
Yeah.
Or what could be perceived as a negative.
Yeah.
But then they go on about, what are all the positives about it.
Exactly, yeah.
Maybe some kind of spin like that.
Yeah, as long as you're being real about we do more before 8 a.m. because you're getting up at 3 a.m. Whatever, it's like, it's really happening, yeah. Yeah. Yes? Oh, my friend. Yes. So I'd say we worked with the company One Technologies, and their content hasn't launched yet, or I would share it. Very, very technical, the projects that the developers are working on, and they were very, very clear about what's exciting in the projects, and using the technical names specifically. And even on the other side, so we have, actually can show you guys. We did work with a company called Menzies Aviation, recruiting a lot of people who are working in airports, fueling operators, things like that. So a realistic job, it's basically a realistic job preview of people actually doing their job and talking about how hard it is. But yes, to answer your question, yes. And the more specific, the better, to recruit a specific, when you're thinking about job descriptions. Oh, no question? Okay. Okay, yep.
Do you have any advice about kind of driving away a certain type of candidate?
Yeah.
Like, for example, in sales, we always get applicants that have tons of experience, and we don't want anyone like that. We want people that have no experience.
Yeah, I think that is, so yeah, I hear you. I'd say that one way, the CVS call center was a good example, because they were recruiting, they actually were, I guess it's a different story, because in their case, the pool didn't have the people that had customer service experience. Okay.
I guess one example I would give for that would be, we're working with a government contractor right now, defense contractor, and one of their engineers, her major in college was literature and writing. So I think finding the people in your organization that have that background that has nothing to do with sales, and then talking them through what convinced them to go into sales and what they liked about it. So she talked about all of her writing and that interest in literature, and then she took one little coding class and she loved it, and then all of a sudden she went into it. So I think finding those people and demonstrating that would appeal to people that don't have a sales background.
But I don't have any advice on driving them away. Okay, so here's a hiring manager video. Here's values. We can play a little bit of this. So this is what happens when you want to communicate the values of your company. You can do one video or piece of content per value, or you can create one piece of content about your values. So this is a good, interesting story.
2012, I was pretty much alone in Austin. My family all lived back in North Carolina, and I had to have some major surgery. And one of the people that I worked with was a really good friend. They gave him the day off so that he could come stay with me in the hospital. But it was only going to be after the surgery the next day that he could be there. So I was a little panicked about being alone in the hospital. And when I woke up from my surgery, my manager was sitting in my hospital room. And then when I woke up again later, somebody else from my team was there. Sorry. It was probably the only time that I just wasn't afraid, when you're very vulnerable. And I don't know, it was just perfect.
For love, the symbol that represents love is a heart. I don't think I need to explain that. It makes a lot of sense to most people. And quite frankly, love is the easiest one to explain too. It's love our clients, love our company, love our coworkers.
And I think what a defining moment for me when I really, fell in love with our clients was after we went through all of the work to do the initial launch of the Kasasa brand. And I worked really closely with that initial set of 10 pioneer clients, and I got to know them really well. And then we had this big event when we decided this is going to be our core strategy. We called it Kasasa Nation. There was, 500 people there. And we had this group of this group of pioneer clients get up, and they gave their stories and their testimonials. And I remember I was standing in the back of the room, this huge room with all these people, and all of a sudden I'm crying back there listening to these clients tell their stories about how this has changed their credit union, how it's changed the culture of their bank, how it's saved their bank. Really major stories. And actually some of them made personal shout outs to me from the stage, and I just was so touched. And I realized these are my friends now. We've really bonded by building a brand together. That's something that most people don't do in a lifetime.
Whether it be the death of grandparents or my daughter in the hospital, and every single time the company rallied around me. From when I came back from a funeral, there'd be a pot of flowers there, or a donation made to a charity, or a nice huge basket full of candy and movies and books and things for my daughter in the hospital.
If you take a moment to think about the person that you love the most, and imagine them struggling or having a hard time, what emotion does that elicit? Probably what you want to do is you want to reach out and help them. You want to talk to them. You want to encourage them and help them. And you care about them, right? And that's really what love is all about.
But yeah, so it's surprising too. You would expect maybe like an accounting they're actually compliance accounting software, and they have a very touchy-feely culture. So you might not expect that if they didn't have content that you were viewing to tell you that. Any other? Yeah, go ahead.
Who's paying for this? Whose budget is this going?
Great question. Really good question. Lots of different places. So CVS, the business is funding it. The people who are having the problem are funding it. And maybe they're splitting it, but I think for the most part that's how it's working. For Sodexo, they have an employer branding team, they have a budget, but they are also very strategic about their spending. So it's something that they talked about doing for 3 years and then budgeted like 3 years ahead. Now, I'm not saying that that's because it was so expensive, it's just that's how their budget cycles work, and that's how they have to validate internally. Dell, because of the Dell EMC merger, they had money they had money around that event, their team. Visionist, which is the small government contractor in Maryland, it didn't come from a budget, but the CEO purchased it. Another thought is, especially for you, if anyone works at a smaller company that has a founder CEO, appealing to a sense of, hey, you're growing, the culture is going to be out of your hands, the culture you crafted. Let's get those stories from early days to make sure that everyone's onboarded or everyone coming in the organization. That's been very helpful for us in a selling capacity when you're talking to a founder CEO, appealing to that sense of scaling and what they've built. Oh, wrapping it up. Okay. Any other questions at all? Was this helpful? Was this good? Was this bad? Okay. All right, and hopefully you can go do it. Thank you.